G'day and welcome to Does It Matter? I want to talk about incentives. Incentives have guided humanity for hundreds of thousands of years, and they, with a coincidence with a variety of other things, the development of language, domestication of certain animals, an understanding of how seeds and propagation cycles in agriculture worked, which we learnt as foragers and nomads, allowed us to form civilization. But we needed incentives to do that. People found that when they could grow seeds in a particular spot, they didn't have to chase the crops. Instead of wandering from area to area looking for those crops, they could grow them all year round. And they found they could grow several different types of crops. And they could instead of chasing animals, they could herd and gather animals in flocks and herds and eat from them. Take their wool, take their skin, eat their meat, and survive. And they didn't have to move. So the incentives were arrayed to be able to settle in one place, and that's the birthplace of civilization, probably well over 10,000 years ago. We need to look at our incentives now. We really, really do. We have incentivized a me, my needs first, hyper-agentic society that only really encourages people to focus on their own needs first. We do not think of family anything like even just our parents and our grandparents did, let alone previous generations. We do not consider other things than ourselves. We just don't. And want and needs are now intertwined in a way that is not healthy. What you want and what you need are often two different things. And I would argue that because of the heavy marketing leaning predominantly towards women, because women buy and shop more and are bigger agents on the market than men are, in terms of the frequency of purchases and total volume of purchases, they've been heavily marketed to, and so they've been heavily influenced by this. And when you add in, evolutionary study of hypergamy into that, we have incentivized women in particular to go for what they want at the cost of what they need. And men are doing the same thing to some degree, to a lesser degree, because society offers men less choice when it comes to that matter. Men just have always had less choice. We've got to remember that for most of human history, 40% of men never got to breed. They didn't breed. Male mortality rates amongst children were higher than female mortality rates because male young children are more fragile and more immune weak than female children, and they are more prone to genetic problems because of our gene structure. So men were less, and still are less, given less freedom. We're also more dangerous. We're bigger, stronger, and more prone to being dangerous as a result of that. So society puts more constraints on men, far more constraints now than it ever does on women. And there's some reasons for that. You can understand some of the reasons for that. But we are gradually removing all those constraints. And what we are seeing when people's incentives are misaligned, when you don't care about family, you don't care about community, and that applies to most of you. That applies to me even, though I have spent most of my life fighting that. But it still influences me. It still affects me sometimes. I still find myself thinking in a hyper-agentic way a lot because that's all we hear. And we think that makes us happy, yet we are the most medicated, unhappy generations, the last 2 or 3, that have ever existed. Like, we've been looking at mental health for 150 years. We've got data going back that far and further. And we are not happy. We are not healthy, physically or mentally. So what went wrong? When we misalign want with need, when our incentives are set up to cater to our wants and not meet our needs, we end up with a society that is culturally skewed and now increasingly economically skewed, because you can buy a really cheap TV. I can buy this nice new couch I just bought, so cheap, a few $100. My parents would have had to work their asses off to buy something equivalent when they were my age. That it would have been much more expensive for them to buy. TVs were more expensive. So consumer goods have become incredibly cheap. Try and get a house. Try and buy a house now. 15 times the average wage in Australia. Like, it's out of reach for most people. And the economic structure for things you need, electrical power, we have the highest electricity in Australia in the world, which we shouldn't. We produce everything that we have that produces power, renewables and gas, we have here. So why are we paying so much money for it? The greed of the rich, the greed of the top X percent, whatever it is, 10, 15, 20% are taking all the wealth. They're all the landlords as well. So homes are expensive, rents are expensive, houses are expensive when they shouldn't be. We have a surplus of space here, and most countries do. Why are we paying so much? Again, greed, misaligned incentives, wants mistaken for needs. Over and over again, if you look around, you will begin to see the misalignment in society, and you will see needs and wants being mixed up. So many people want things that they don't need, and they don't have what they need. And those are not only societal problems and cultural problems, they become structural problems, economic problems, because the economy does follow culture to a large degree. So we have a massive problem in the West, and it's spreading all over the world now. It's, countries, Eastern countries like China and Korea are worse off than us in terms of their birth rates. We have collapsing birth rates, and people go, oh, it's not such a bad idea. It's terrible. If we don't at least maintain the 8 billion to 10 billion we need to keep the lights on, the society we have going, society will collapse. That's a fact. It doesn't matter what you think. That's a fact. It doesn't matter what we want to be true. That's a fact. Our societal system is set up for growth. Now, we could potentially get to a steady state with the right technologies, but rapidly declining populations also mean that we either have to offset our low population growth with migration. That creates a whole nest of problems. There are more and more studies coming out showing that a reasonably homogenous society with a large, even one that's polyglot like Australia or the US, but it's still largely one culture, it can only carry so many of other cultures, particularly very disparate cultures, religious-wise and economically-wise and culture-wise, before there starts to emerge serious problems, which can eventually cause civil war and internecine strife. We don't want that. Why would anyone want that? But we're in denial of that because we want to solve one problem by creating more problems that are even worse in the long run. Importing people isn't going to solve the birth crisis. It's not going to solve the economic crisis that will cause. Now, we can solve it to some degree with automation and AI and with much longer lifespans through biological interventions, which are inevitable and coming. But it doesn't entirely resolve it, because you still have large numbers of people in the future who are incentivized to disappear into a VR heaven because real life sucks, because they can't get a date. They can't find a person to be with, or anyone that they want to be with, because they have unrealistic expectations in many cases, particularly on the female side of things, like ridiculous ones that keep them from being happy. Because that's the thing, the misalignment between what you want and what you need. And the thing that I would suggest, especially to the ladies that might be listening to this, is that you are not particularly good at working out what you need. And I hold that for most human beings, male or female. We are not particularly good at working out what we need, which is why societies in the past had a much heavier and more intrusive role into what we did, what we needed, because people would choose to eat candy all day, and they do. Look at the obesity rate, look at the diabetes, look at the lifestyle diseases that are proliferating without any, they're not even slowing down. Despite the looks maxing and the gym bro culture that is that has grown online, most people are just watching. They're just voyeurs. They watch porn, they watch TV, they watch reality TV, they get fat, and they suffer all the diseases and all the lifestyle ailments that come with that. Because their incentives are set up to just watch. Their incentives are set up to be passive, not to contribute, not to create, but to just drink the swill. But they're also given hyperagentic wants. So when you mate that apathy to high expectations, it's a disaster. And it's a particularly disaster for women because they're being kept alone. And men are being isolated as a result of it too. The reality too is that in a society where for most of human history, females had each other, highly prosocial, even more prosocial than men. And they had each other and they functioned in tight clusters within society. And I say that very carefully, within society, contained by a shell of men protecting them. Was there abuse? Of course there was. But by and large, for the most part, they were taken care of, and much better taken care of than the men were. The men were the shield. The women were the shielded. Okay? And before you run off cherry picking countless examples of the opposite, I want you to think about what's the general rule. What would support society? Society couldn't function if most men didn't abuse their partners, if most men did support, did take care of, and did sacrifice for their partners and provide themselves as a human shield against nature. What most people today don't realize, and this is men and women, is nature killed us in humongous numbers. Our child mortality rate was about 50% until the 18th century. 50% of your kids died before they never reached adulthood. Diseases regularly wiped us out. Predations of nature, exposure, starvation, crop failures. Oh my God, just killed hundreds of millions over a few centuries. The Aurelian plagues devastated the Roman Empire, probably caused its early fall. Around the time Marcus Aurelius was emperor, one of the greatest emperors of Rome, they were hit by plagues from the east, which seems to be a common theme. All right, and those plagues destroyed, expected 25 to 30 odd % of Romans were killed during that period of time, and their associated civilized provinces. It was devastating, and it actually weakened them permanently. They never fully recovered from it, and eventually they began to contract around the 3rd century, and that was the end of them, because once you stop growing, which is a common theme, once you stop growing, once you stop expanding, once you stop evolving, and I'm not talking about just physical expansion, but evolving here and here, once you stop being more and trying to be more, well, the contraction leads to destruction. Inevitably, it leads to collapse. And that is what we face now. We face what Rome faced. And hopefully we'll make a different decision, not to contract, not to withdraw within ourselves and live in a perpetual pleasure dream in VR or with robots servicing us. But we need to choose each other, and we're not doing that now. Women are choosing the top 20%, and that's a fact. That's just an undeniable fact, because they're told they can and they should. And the sad reality is that most of those women will not receive what they're hoping for. Okay, the top 20% of men have always gotten more women, and they will get those women and then leave them. That's the sad reality. They will. And they will move on to a woman of their own status, of their own looks level, of their own status, someone who appeals to them. They will. That's just the way it is. It's always been that way, and it likely always will be that way until human nature fundamentally changes itself, and that will take quite some time.
So people need to start looking for different things. We need to align more with what we need and make that what we want what we need. And to do that, we need to change our expectations. Both men and women, we need to change our expectations. We need to seek harmony, stability, peace. We need to seek depth. We need those things. We need to align ourselves with sustainable values, sustainable expectations, sustainable growth. We still need growth. A society that doesn't grow dies. But we need sustainable growth, where we might have to plateau for a little while before we grow again, to make sure that technology and our own policies are in alignment with keeping this beautiful earth healthy and clean. We need to heal the earth, the damage we've done to the earth, and then we need to maintain it. So growth will always need to be balanced with the needs of the ecosphere. But we can't stay on this planet forever. We can't. Not if we want to be more, grow more. I think that we're here to evolve. If we don't evolve, if human beings stay exactly the same for the next billion years, we've wasted everything we were given. We've been given this amazing planet, amazing resources, a solar system that's just incredible. And what are we doing with it? We're fighting over scraps when we could have the wealth of the solar system to support a civilization that could expand to the stars very comfortably. And a civilization that could bring wonders to the earth, to all of us. We could go and see wonders. We could explore. We could grow. We could make friends. There may be others out there. We could be friends with them. And we certainly could grow strong enough to protect ourselves from those who don't want to be friends. Strong enough that they'll leave us alone, which is the best thing we can hope for in nature. Because remember, it's still nature out there. It's not magical. It's not wonderful out there. It's nature. Supernovas wipe out planets on a regular basis. Rocks fall on planets. The universe doesn't care. It propagates along its own mysterious lines, and we are forced to do so as well. And with technology, we can mitigate a lot of that. But remember, we're probably not the only ones out there, and not everyone's going to be friendly. So we also need to get out so that we can ensure that humanity is not all in one big spot to squish by the nature or malign influences. And to do that, we need to reset our incentives to have a beautiful future, that sort of Star Trek-y kind of future. We need to align our incentives better than we have. Unfortunately, this is what I think. I think human beings are terrible at doing what they should, and they're much better at doing what they want. We are spoiled brats still. Human nature is still immature. AI and robots are about to throw that up in the air. In the next 10 years, the vast majority of women will lose their jobs, and about half of men will lose their jobs. And then over the next 10 to 20 years, the vast majority of people will lose their jobs. And that will throw society into a complete spin. We need to come out of it with a better sense of incentives, a better sense of society than we have now. We need to care about more than just ourselves. Now, hopefully, when humans are living for centuries, which is very much on the cards now, and we are living for much longer, and we can get that longitudinal perspective, wisdom grows with age in many cases to some degree, we can change society to be a healthier, better place. I like a society with lots of kids in it. Children are beautiful. I teach children. I love them. They're wonderful. They're a pain in the ass too, but they're wonderful. We need them. They remind us of why we're here. A society that just is the next orgasm, the next meal, the next beautiful handbag, the next beautiful dress, whatever it is that you want, is not going to meet your deepest needs. Not at all. It just isn't. But love, connection, commitment, responsibility, strength, those things will meet your needs. Deepest needs. They will. Not wealth, not status. None of those things will meet your needs. Not in the new society to come, where wealth and status won't mean much. They aren't. Not going to mean much.
But we need to head towards a society that wants to do that. Or we head towards Elysium, where all the wealth continues to funnel upstairs and we become increasingly poor. We end up fighting over crumbs while banquets are eaten above our heads, and that will be 80 to 90% of us. That's where we're headed, because our incentives are poorly arrayed. A humanity that's committed has community. I mean, do you think it's an accident that community's been destroyed? Do you think it's an accident that they forced every human being of adult age into the workforce for all their lives, and then made sure it was expensive enough that both people had to grind forever? No seasons. Our ancestors had, until the Industrial Revolution, had months to themselves where they did very little. They had plenty of time for each other and family and for community. They could help each other. We don't have that anymore. We've been squeezed into tight little cubicles of industrial purpose. And then they give us handbags and nice cars and consumer goods to make us feel better. While we live in dog boxes, not houses anymore, just little dog boxes. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? It should make you wonder. If it doesn't, you're not paying attention. And you'll pay a price for not paying attention. Pay attention to your life. Pay attention to the lives of those who preceded you, and you'll see the differences. And you at least, if you've got half a brain, wonder why. Why is this so? And once you begin to wonder why, it'll all jump out at you very quickly. We need each other. We need our civilization to grow. We need connections. We need networks. And we need the balance of forces. If government, which is growing far too strong, and corporations and top-end power becomes too strong, they will crush us. Please understand that. They are in the beginnings of crushing us. They are beginning to push back and down to make sure they can control us. They will crush us in the coming decades or two. They will crush us. They're doing it now. Hate speech laws and control, nanny state. Before you realize it, you on the left in particular, you will be crushed as well. You will be constrained, and they'll start to tell you what to do. They'll panic when the low birth rate and other factors start impacting on the economy, and you'll start to be told what to do. The right and the left will both tell you what to do when they begin to get desperate. So as people, we need to take the helm. We need to take the helm in our own lives. We need to network with other people. Join a fucking union if you're a worker. Join a union and have your voice heard. And don't just slavishly obey what the union says. Argue within it. Debate. We need a rambunctious society full of people who are willing to speak, who are willing to listen as well, because both are necessary, who are willing to hear other people out and then speak themselves. And if we can do that societally, at all levels, in families and in communities and in workplaces, we will be able to provide the necessary upward force to prevent authority from crushing us. That's a balance. This is a balance. We need the balance. Men and women balanced. Two fists together are stronger than one. At the moment, it's this or this, turning away from each other. We need this going forward into the future. This is men and women. This is humanity. And we don't have that now. We don't have that. We're in a bloody mess, and we need to change that. We change it with love, with commitment, and with a realistic assessment of what we want and what we need. And we need to function from there. And we need to talk to each other a lot more. There needs to be no taboo subjects. There really does. There needs to be nothing that we can't talk about honestly and openly. I think I'd do my best to propagate that, and I'll try even harder in the future to do so, to talk about the black and taboo subjects, because we need to. And I'm going to raise them more and more and more, largely along evolutionary psychology and behavioral genetics lines, because I think that we are animals. I think we are powerful animals, but nonetheless we're part of nature. We're not separate from nature. We're not special in that sense. We're just amazing animals. We're part of the natural forces of this world, this universe, and we should not remove ourselves from it so easily. We have a force called technology, which I believe is another force in the universe that comes into being through consciousness, through awareness, and we can use that. And we can use it to destroy ourselves, which is still on the cards very strongly at the moment. We can use it to become something far more than we are now, something better, something more powerful, something kinder, more creative, more productive, more wonderful. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? Even psychopaths want most of that. All right? We all want it. But to achieve it, we have to do the right things. We do. You can't just do what you want. Doing what you want will destroy you. Doing what you need to do will sustain you and help you and build you. And it will shift what you want to what you need. Oos.